You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation.
Welcome back to 40 Fit Radio, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. This is your host, Coach Trent, and in a minute we're going to be joined by Coach D and our guest, Robert Santana, because you are listening to part 2 of our conversation with Santana about weight loss, or more specifically, going from fat and weak to strong and lean, which is what we all want to do, right? So this mini-series is about establishing a practical method for losing weight, losing body fat specifically, gaining muscle mass, and getting stronger all at the same time. And as Santana explained to us, in his method of coaching nutrition, he starts with what he considers the most important thing first, and that is changing your habits. So the first thing that Robert does when he gets a new client is determining where they are deficient in their diet, and then addressing that first by having them eat more of that food. So he doesn't start off with calorie restriction. He doesn't start off with pulling certain foods out of the diet. He instead looks for foods that need to be added to the diet. So that means for most people, number 1, increasing protein intake. Number 2, increasing vegetable intake. And then 3, cleaning up the food quality of people eating, right? And that usually means pulling out some of the fats and high calorie foods that people eat, like ice cream and chips and stuff like that. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go back to last week's episode. That is episode number 60, and you can hear all about Santana's approach to changing your habits and addressing that first. Today, we're going to talk about actual macro prescriptions. In other words, how much of these foods you should be eating, how much protein, how much fat, how many carbs. And we're going to talk about what weight loss will look like, especially for an untrained novice. So if you remember an example from part 1, we have a woman that has not trained before, so she's going to start doing a novice LP, a novice linear progression with the barbell, getting stronger every single workout, and at the same time, she's going to eat in a method that's designed to produce weight loss. And as she loses weight, she's going to be getting stronger, adding muscle mass to her body, and therefore her body fat percentage is going to go down. So today we're going to hear from Santana about what exactly that process looks like, how long it's going to take, what she should expect in terms of realistic weight loss numbers, and as a trainee gets into the weight loss process and gets somewhere down the road, what changes they should start to make when their progress either on the scale or their progress in their training starts to slow down, because we all know everything comes to an end and we have to make adjustments, we have to make changes. So Santana is going to walk us through how to do that. So here we go. Without further ado, here's part 2.
So you've changed the habits. When you're talking about carbohydrates, so we focus on a protein level first, and we got to make sure that, what's your general rule of thumb for protein per pound of mass, body mass? What do you like to see?
I tend to go by, gram per pound at least, or 0.8.
Okay.
0.8 or higher.
Okay.
And
especially if they're training.
Yeah.
If they're lifting.
And for, these medical community people that
right.
following the RDA that are, 0.8 per kilogram.
Right.
If you convert 1.8 to 1 gram per pound to percentage of calories, it's usually within the AMDR.
Okay.
Now, if the person's 350 pounds,
yeah, you're not going to have me 350 pounds.
No, I'm not. And if you want to talk absolute numbers, and I wrote this in my starting strength article, most humans, male or female, or most males, about 150 to 250 grams of protein, depending on size.
Yeah.
Not many men that need less, not many men that need more.
Right.
For females, I'd say about, 100 to 180 is typically what I've seen.
Cool.
These are general numbers, and when you convert them over in relation to body mass and convert them over to percentage of total calories,
right,
it's an agreement.
Sure.
What?
Sure.
Big. What's the word? Big agencies or
right.
organizations.
Big
think. There you go.
Yeah. So what percentage do you want of their total caloric consumption to be protein?
It's usually ends up 20 to 30%.
Okay. Carbohydrates?
About 40 or higher, depending on the person. If they're heavier, it's closer to 40. If they're lighter, it's closer to 60.
And fats would be 20? 10, 20?
Yeah. 20 to 25.
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
I don't typically go 10 because it's really hard to comply with 10. Try it out sometime.
Sure. Especially with today's foods and everything else.
It's everywhere. We'll talk about that too, but usually 20 to 25 to start out, and if they're at the end of a grueling diet, they might be around 15. You know? I went to 10 once to see what it was like, and man, 2 weeks, it's
killer.
You just accidentally go over, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like low carb, you know, like we were saying earlier, people are on keto. Keto's popular now. It's like, I'm like, Darren, do you ever wonder, because this is all self-reported, how many of these people are actually eating 20 grams of carbohydrates or less, you know?
Fats. No, carbohydrates.
For keto.
That's
for keto,
right. Yeah, 20 grams of carbohydrates or less,
For everybody listening, think about what that entails. Try to track your carbohydrates every day and think about what 20 would look like.
Right, you basically are eating meat and fats all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to even eat any vegetables at all.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think what's interesting about that, when you talk about the carbohydrates and keeping the carbohydrates higher, especially if they're in a training mode, they need the energy for lifting. They need the energy for also what occurs after lifting, which is the recovery process for building muscle mass, right? And for building, muscle protein synthesis. And so when you talk about carbohydrates, their carbohydrates, naturally, her carbohydrates are going to drop in this model. In regards to total carbohydrates, because you're focusing first on vegetables and fruits, and they're just better sources, less dense calorically. Than so when you say, I always tell people all the time, they say, well, do you eat a low carbohydrate diet? I say, well, not purposefully, but unpurposefully I do. The fact that I get most of my carbohydrates from good vegetables and low sugar fruits. I prefer low sugar fruits over anything, like your berries and your blueberries and your blackberries and your apples, those types of things, high in fiber fruits. And so naturally, I'm going to have a lower caloric value of carbohydrates than if I were getting them from ice cream and potato chips all the time and all these other, high fat, high carbohydrate foods, very dense.
That brings up a good point, because when you mentioned ice cream, I started thinking about how a lot of people misclassify foods as carbohydrates. So they think because it's sweet, it's a carb. Well, ice cream is a carb and a fat.
Right.
Donuts are a carb and a fat.
Oh, right.
Candy, well, mostly not like fruit candy, but like chocolate is a carb and a fat. You know, like I hate carbs, and they eat like bars of chocolate or Kisses or Ghirardellis or whatever, and I'm like, that's carbs and fat. We talked about that in the other podcast.
Here in Texas, the ever-present tortilla chip, right? A lot of those are just saturated in oil.
Lunch.
They're like, I cut my carbs down, and I lost a bunch of weight, and it's like, you stopped eating those tortilla chips that have 5 of them has 10 grams of fat. You know?
Yeah, like we had at lunch.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
Well, we're just throwing it out there.
There's corn in there. It's a vegetable.
Exactly. It's a vegetable. So it's veggies. So, there's so many different dieting methods, and I think people get so freaking confused. I know in our gym population and the people I talk to within our podcast community, everyone, it's so confusing for them. Do they just look at, macros, if they do a macro diet where it's just they can eat anything they want as long as it fits their macros, what's that? YFIM? What's that? If it fits your macros.
IFF. Oh crap! It's been
if
years.
If it fits your macros, right? IFFYM.
There you go.
Yeah.
If it fits your macros, then you can eat it. But do you subscribe to that, or would you use that model?
It depends on the person. Again, I did it years ago, and I probably do it now without thinking about it. First time I hired a diet coach, I did that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool, because for me, who I was a dietitian.
Right.
I've been doing some sort of food monitoring since I was 18.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this kind of takes the legwork out of it, But I was already used to eating a lot of protein. So the thing is, if you're getting a lot of protein and you're hitting your fiber, unless your calorie load is really high, you're probably going to have a reasonably healthy diet, even if you eat crap.
Right.
Now, that's me. I'm an experiment. At that point, it was, 2013? So that was 11 years of, some sort of semi-structured dieting.
Sure.
With some breaks in between, of course. I wasn't continuously, anal about it. I had periods like when I got my master's, I wasn't eating as well. But in general, I can go in there and eat 200 grams of protein. That wasn't a problem for me. So I'm eating 200 grams of protein. I'm hitting 40 grams of fiber. So if I'm filling my extra calories with an ice cream cone from McDonald's, or, if I want to get what did I used to get back then? McDouble.
Yeah.
Because it was right behind
Sure.
It was behind the dialysis center I was at. But let me caveat there. My macro needs at the time when I was gaining weight, I needed 555 carbs and 116 grams of fat.
That's a lot of carbs.
Wow. Yeah. I've since learned I don't need quite that much food, but I was intentionally aiming for that. And, when you're working 8-hour job in a clinical setting, and there's the closest thing is a Smart and Final, or a CVS or McDonald's.
Yeah.
I'd cycle
high quality food sources.
Yeah, I'd cycle between those. I'd be able to get some produce at Smart and Final.
Yeah, right by the dialysis center.
There's an El Pollo Loco too. There's an El Pollo Loco. So I would just cycle through those. Sometimes I go to McDonald's, and at the time, this is before they started putting real sugar back in their ice cream cones. So that the cones were like 150 calories, I think, because they were using artificial sweeteners at the time. So I would just get one of those. So I'm like, it's not very high calorie and it's good, and it kind of satisfies that sweet tooth,
Sure.
And then if I was low on protein or fat, like if I was at like 50 grams of fat or 70 grams of fat, I'd be like, well, I got 40 more. Let me get a McDouble. Get some protein, get some fat. It's not a very good source of protein, by the way, only like 15 grams, but it was there. I had it within my macros because I was subscribing to the IIFYM model.
Sure.
And that worked. But now what I've seen with your average person, like the person we're talking about that has never been coached to their diet, has never lifted, isn't really into fitness per se, they have a full-time job and exercises a small portion of their life. A lot of the time, it's like, people stop paying attention to this stuff because they have other stuff going on. When you stop paying attention,
life gets busy.
You do what's intuitive.
Yeah. Every time I tell myself, it's like, I'm gonna track my food for this week, and then I'll start, and first half of the day is great, and then after lunch, there's just a black hole between about noon and 6 p.m. And at that point, I'm like, I can't even remember everything I've eaten since then, so I just screw it. I'll do it next week.
And I find with my client base and with myself, I try to simplify things. I try to tell them, find a handful of food groups that you really like for breakfast, lunch, a snack maybe in between breakfast and lunch, a snack between lunch and dinner, and then however late at night you recommend your clients to eat. I really don't think that drives much, unless they're eating a lot of high fat or something at night, late at night. But I tell them just pick a handful of food groups or meals that you like, and let's keep it simple. That just works for me. It makes my day more predictable. It's something I don't have to mess with. My wife and I, when we're doing grocery shopping, when Michelle and I say let me rephrase that, because if she listens to this, she'll say, what are you talking about weird? This weird stuff. I do all the grocery shopping. So when she goes and gets groceries, there we go. I eat the same thing for breakfast every single morning. It's just easy for me.
Yeah, right here.
And then that way I know exactly what my macros are for that morning. So I think for that new client too, for that new female client that's wanting to lose weight and gain muscle, number one, we have to put her in a scenario where she's becoming more aware of her foods, like you're talking about, that she's logging her foods in some method where it's accountable. And I love the picture diary. I love that she just takes a picture of what she ate for breakfast. Boom. Takes a picture of a snack she had or the lunch that she had or whatever, or dinner and so forth and so on. And then you've got to balance out driving her macronutrients so that the number one priority is going to be her protein level. We want that high. And you kind of gave those ranges. I would say that, let's say we want to get her down to 140 and she's at 190. Let's say we want to get her down to 140. That's the ideal body weight. She's at 190. Would you say the protein would be appropriate at around 130, 140?
Yeah, totally fine, yeah.
Yeah, if you had her protein, because that's going to be probably closer to where we want her, that's probably closer to her true lean mass anyway.
Very few. There's very few females I've had to go over 150 on.
Yeah.
And typically those are women that are like built for powerlifting, strongman, just more muscular women tend to need more protein. But your average female who comes in is untrained, is not a very thick build.
Right.
Somewhere between 100 and 150. You start getting the girl who's squatting 300 pounds. It's going to be higher.
Yeah. Right. And I think just by the nature of having her eat that much protein, you're also filling her up. You're giving her more calories of a food macronutrient that, number one, has a lower caloric value to start with. So you're not counting calories directly, but you're counting calories. I mean, indirectly,
Yeah.
you're giving her a calorie reduction, and then you're focusing on better quality carbs and making sure that she's getting good vegetables and good fruit intake. And say that she's in that range of 140 pounds was our goal. She's at 190, and she's 5. Let's just say that's not inappropriate. She's say 5'4" or 5'5", but she's medium boned, so she's not small boned. She got a little stockier build, so that'd be about right. 140 is a muscular build for a female. How would you determine how many carbohydrates you're going to give her?
So at that point,
And fats.
if I was using a numerical system, I'd probably, there's several equations you can use. You can do kilocalories per kilogram. You can do Harris Benedict, Mifflin St. George, but I'd probably either use a calculation, which is what I used to do when I was younger, but more recently, probably in the last 5 years, I just look at the pictures or look at the written record if that's what I'm collecting, and I'll see what their baseline is. What are you eating to maintain? And then I'll subtract from there, because the reality of these calculators is that they're, it's theoretical.
Right, they're guesstimations.
They're guesstimations. They're close a lot of the time, not always though. So I'd rather know what their habits are, so I'm not taking them from 3,000 calories to 1,000 calories.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Yeah, which I don't start anybody at 1,000 calories, so that's probably that's an exaggeration. I wouldn't want to take them from their 3,000 calorie baseline that she's eating to maintain 190 down to 1,500.
Yeah, I love the picture diary concept though, because immediately you get that 7 days of logging, and you get to see, okay, let's try to eliminate or decrease the intake of the Bluebell ice cream every night. Or I would like to not see that in the pictures anymore. And I know you probably deal with it better than I would, but or I do. But you go through and you're eliminating those items that are naturally dense in fat calories and complex carbohydrate calories, or processed carbs.
Yeah.
And so you're through the process, you've already done a calorie reduction.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily mathematical again, but there is a calorie reduction.
Yeah.
And the calorie gain is focused on the protein side, which drives the metabolism, drives the muscle gain. And that's what we're talking about, is helping her lose fat and still gain muscle at the same time. And you think it's possible with someone like her that is, let's say, 40 pounds overweight to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time?
Oh, yeah. Novice effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So there's a couple points you brought up there that kind of reminded me of some things. First, let's talk about food volume, because we've mentioned several times you're getting less calories when you're focusing on protein.
Yeah, sure.
What we mean less calories per gram. So the density is not as calorically dense as fat. So by that I mean, when you eat a gram of fat, you're getting 9 calories per gram. When you eat a gram of protein or carbohydrate, you're getting 4 calories per gram. And when you get a gram of alcohol, or 1 ml, so a gram and an ml are equal to each other, for those of you listening.
You got to translate that to ounces. I'm just kidding.
There are 30.
We can't do imperial or
1 ml
here.
is nothing. It's like in a syringe. It's that much.
So in every ounce of alcohol, there are 30. Wait, hold on. 7 calories per ml. There's 30 mLs in an ounce. So 7 times 30.
210. So there's
and 1 ounce of alcohol.
7 times 30 is 210.
Yeah.
And 1 ounce of alcohol.
Right.
So do you take 210 times 7 then? Well, you already did that. That's 210 calories.
You're right. Yeah, 210 calories in an ounce of alcohol. But the thing is, when you drink a shot, it's not an ounce of alcohol. There's water in there. There's sometimes other things in there.
Well, that matters what the proof is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if
it's whiskey.
Yeah, if it's whiskey, it's going to be about 90 proof, which is 45% alcohol. So if it's, let's just do some quick math here.
Yeah, he's doing quick math on his iPhone.
A shot is technically 1.5 ounces.
Okay.
So 1.5 times 30, you're getting 45 mLs, which is what I thought in my head. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So now you have 45 mLs and it's 90 proof, so that's 45% alcohol. So times 0.45, you get 20 mLs of alcohol in that shot. So it's not a whole ounce. It's not even a whole ounce. So the whole ounce is 30 mLs.
So 20 ml times 7?
So times 7, that's 141.75 calories per shot of alcohol.
Right.
People don't think about that. That perception that I've gotten talking to people about alcohol is that they act as though it doesn't really contain that many calories.
Yeah. And you were also saying that when you drink alcohol, you normally don't drink alone.
No, you're not just
not a George Thorogood.
Yeah, exactly.
You took words out of my mouth.
One
I
shot.
drink a
Yeah.
little.
What nobody? Yeah.
Well, all right. So
I'm
this
not
week,
good
my wife tells me this because she loves Negronis, right? That's like her go-to drink. And apparently this week is Negroni week. And I think about it, a lot of the drinks that people are drinking at bars too. It's full of sugar, Campari and vermouth and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, when you eat alcohol, you usually consume food along with it too, some snacking or food or other things, and so.
But that's interesting. So alcohol, because I didn't know that. I'd heard the numbers 4, 4, and 9. So carbs and protein being 4 calories, fat being 9 calories. But I did not know that alcohol is 7 calories per gram equivalent.
Yeah.
And so that's very dense. That's almost double what a carb or protein is.
It's about double. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very interesting.
And so even though a glass of red wine at the end of the day might be good for you, it also has quite a few calories in it too. So you just have to consider that. And that's a lot lower alcohol content too. So it is a lot lower in alcohol.
Yeah, so you just reminded me of like the common alcohol cheats between the genders, since we're talking about gender differences, since I've pretty much worked with everybody at this point.
Yeah, sure.
The females, when they go over, because of the females that hire me, not all of you.
Vodka.
No, not
red
even.
Wine.
No, red wine.
Yeah.
Red wine and chocolate is the most common thing that I see in female clients that hire me, not you females that have not hired me.
Okay. So what about males?
Whiskey and steak.
Yeah.
Red meat and whiskey.
Yep.
And it's like, it sounds like a stereotype that probably a lot of people have heard, but I got the data, I've seen it,
It's true.
The people that have
not
hired
a stereotype
me.
if it's true.
No.
Ron Swanson will never hire you.
No, I've had I drink wine. I drink both, so I'm I'm an outlier.
Sure.
I switch between red wine and whiskey.
Yeah.
And I've had men that drink just beer, and I've had women that drink beer, they go to breweries, so totally not stereotyping, but I'm just saying the trends that I've seen in the diet logs that I've looked at.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. So now we've got our female client. We've first of all found out what her goals are. Second of all, we've had her do her picture diary of her meals for about a week, and now we've kind of dialed in her macros, with protein being our main priority because we're training her and we want her to gain muscle mass. She's doing and to gain muscle mass, we all agree, sitting here at this table, that we would have her barbell lifting 3 days a week during a novice LP. She'd be doing a novice LP if she's never lifted before, meaning a linear progression using the barbell movements of the squat, the press, the deadlift, the bench press. We might have her doing chins and some accessory work too in there as she moves along, and we would be gradually adding load every single session during her training. Now, what I have found is when you do have a client like that, when they first come in and they want weight loss and strength gain, I really watch how they're adapting to the barbell because they should be adapting fast.
Yes.
And they should be climbing. And if I see that they're not, if they have a failure to thrive or a failure to adapt.
Non-responder.
Yeah, a non-responder, whatever you want to call it, then I start looking as a barbell coach / clinician at reasons why they're not doing what I should predictably be seeing them do. And it could be that we're way under eating now. It could be that there's some other blood work issues. It could be there's some hormonal issues. It could be that the YNDTP, they're not doing the program. They've missed 3 workouts in a month, out of 3 times a week for 4 weeks, 12 sessions, they've missed 3 workouts. Well, that's, 25% of their workouts. So they can't do that and adapt as well. They're still going to adapt, but not adapt as well. And so I look at all those things. So now she's lifting and she's eating. And what I see is, here's the biggest problem I see with my clients, even the heavier clients, is they don't quite see the weight gain percentage or the 2 to 3 pounds a week that we talk about usually with someone that's quite a bit overweight, that we see with someone who's just dieting alone and they're not strength training. And what I always tell them, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here as the expert, Robert, is that what they're not seeing is the body recomposition that's occurring.
Yeah.
They're not seeing that the fact that every single week is mixed between a certain percentage of fat loss and a certain percentage of muscle gain. So there's a constant battle of recomposition of body mass. Does that make sense? Am I accurate in that?
You're accurate, yeah. So it won't be reflected on a scale.
Right. And you have to convince them of that. Because, Because women specifically, what I always say is, how do your dresses and how do your pants and your shorts feel? Wow, I dropped down a dress size. I know, but how much? I know, but I haven't lost that much weight. That's what's weird. No, it's not weird. Here's why. So, they need to look at how their body looks and how their clothes feel more than anything. And the fact that they're getting stronger, which is what we're trying to drive here.
Yeah. What is the heuristic with, 1 pound of fat is, X volume versus 1 pound of muscle, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
Well, muscle weighs muscle is 2 times the mass of a fat cell, approximately, right?
The density.
Yeah, the density.
Yeah.
The
okay.
density.
Mass will be equal.
Right.
For equal mass, you're going to get more density in a muscle.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, yeah. So fat mass is about twice the size or volume of muscle mass.
Think about a 2 pound pillow versus a 2 pound brick.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the pillow's going to be huge.
Yeah, and that segues into something else I've been talking to people about, but let me just back up really quick.
Sure.
When I was talking about food volume, I never kind of finished that thought, and it's important because when you're eating a diet that's low in fat and high in carbs, so if you take a 2,000 calorie diet that's 65% carbohydrate and 20% fat or 15% fat, the volume of food is going to be double or even triple or quadruple depending on where you're getting those carbs from, because if you're trying to get that all from vegetables, you're going to be eating pounds and pounds of food.
Right, yeah.
Versus if you're on a keto diet, you're going to be eating less food for the same amount of calories, less food volume. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So and from a satiation standpoint, that's huge. Getting to eat a big pile of something versus 2 pieces of bacon that's a big difference.
Well, and in the keto diet, the way that they offset that theoretically is that even though the volume of food is lower because it's more dense in caloric value, the fat level's a lot higher, and fat is, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty satiating.
Oh, yeah.
When you eat fat, it's pretty satiating.
Yeah, it's definitely more filling.
I mean, when you eat carbs, you want to go back for some more carbs pretty quickly.
Because the more carbs you eat, the more carbs you burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the more fat you eat, the more fat you store, because that's its function number one of fat is to store so that when we have a famine, we survive.
Right,
know?
Sure.
Carbs, on the other hand, they've looked at this. The more carbs you eat, the more you just burn them off.
So yes, for somebody that is a novice and at the beginning of their linear progression under the barbell, what kind of roughly rate of weight loss should they expect? Is that something you can generalize?
You were asking about that. How many pounds a week?
Generally, 1% of body weight per week is the upper limit that I tend to recommend because it's more gradual. So I know for some of you people listening, you might think, well, it's slow. Well, it's supposed to be slow. And just think about the mathematics behind this.
Okay.
We typically tell people, you can only lose 1 to 2 pounds of fat per week, and anything more than that's muscle or water.
Right.
Well, just think about the math, right? So the average untrained female, probably around 1,500 calories. The average untrained male, around 2,000. We're just going to use these general numbers. Obviously, there's outliers, right? So they say that 3,500 calories is in 1 pound of body fat. And I'll come back to why that's not entirely correct, but just for this example, let's say that that's true. So you have to subtract 500 calories per day. Remember, 7 days in a week, so 5 times 7 is 35 to lose 1 pound. So if you want to lose 2 pounds, you have to subtract 1,000. If you want to lose 3 pounds, you got to subtract 1,500. So the woman's already at 0.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
And the male's at 500.
Right.
You have a math problem here.
Yes, absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then Susie, being 190 pounds when she starts, she's looking at max 1.9 pounds of weight loss per week.
Yeah, and I think that's
less.
a good, okay, guys and ladies and everything, like you said, numbers are numbers, so it changes. If you're a male and you weigh 260 and you want to get down to 220, then max you could lose 2.6 pounds a week max. So for Susie, 1.9 pounds, it's important that we set that expectation level up front. That I don't care what you see in in TV, what you see in the media, social media sites, some
stuff is
fad
toxic,
diet. Yeah, most of the stuff, you're right, it is toxic. Our goal is, and if you got to think about it this way too, if she's a 45-year-old female, and we're adding, let's say, 1/8 of a pound of muscle mass per week, okay, or even maybe up to 1/4 pound of muscle mass per week, which would be a pretty fast gain for a 45-year-old female based on where her hormones are, okay? A male 1/4 pound a week for a male that age is pretty dang good. So in a month, they could add a pound of mass, muscle mass. Okay, that's pretty appropriate for a male that age with appropriate hormones. And so, but you think about it, if she's gaining 1/8 of a pound a week in muscle mass, now we've dialed back that number a little more, right? So now we're down to more like 1.6, and so that body recomposition is important. That's why I tell our female clients all the time, stop weighing yourself every day. You're just killing yourself. Your fluid volume, your water retention, blood volume, your hormone levels, are you in your cycle, all those things. Weigh yourself once a week at the same time of day. Weigh yourself naked Friday morning every single week or something. At the same time, before you eat, make all of the measurable variables be the same so that you're getting the best data every single time.
Yeah, I like to tell them Tuesday or Wednesday, because unless you're a bartender or somebody in the service industry, you typically don't do anything too interesting on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, sure.
So by Wednesday, anything you did on the weekend has been urinated out.
Neutralized.
Yeah, and you're probably your normal natural weight by Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a great idea.
I like
so
that.
Tuesday,
I like
Wednesday. Yeah, cool. So what are some of the things we might see with her as she's trying to gain muscle mass and lose body fat? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that you've observed that are going to be challenges that we're going to have to address along the way?
Well, the LP typically runs pretty normal. The upper body might struggle later on. So let's talk about the novice linear progression in general.
Right. The programming model.
Yeah. So the first 8 weeks, as all three of us know, it's mostly neuromuscular efficiency. They're just getting better at moving.
Yeah.
There's no grinding happening yet. Yeah. So even if it's an overweight male client and he's running an LP, first 8 weeks, he's going to lose fat, add weight to the bar. He's not going to have a whole lot of problems.
Right.
Where things get kind of gray and individualized is when they get to that point in the LP where they have to grind. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I've noticed women in general can go further with it than the men. And I don't know if that's because the absolute weight on the bar is a lot heavier, differences in neuromuscular efficiency, or...
Well, have you also flipped programming on them, though, at some point? Have you taken that female client and have you flipped or inverted the set and rep scheme on her like we do with females sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Have you gone from 3 sets of 5 to 5 sets of 3 pretty quickly?
Yeah,
I usually do that after a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. I'll go to 5 sets of 3, and so, or whenever they get a little grindy at all, we go 5 sets of 3.
Yep.
I think that helps them push that LP out farther.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
With a male, I'm much more resistant to doing that because they don't make gains.
Yeah.
They it's not enough volume within the individual set to have them make gains unless they're at the very, very top of like being an intermediate or something like that.
Yeah.
To where that load has gotten heavy enough now where 5 sets of 3 is a biatch. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
So you see that at some point they're going to bonk on being able to handle the intensity. What do you do?
So now we've done 5 sets of 3, right?
Yeah, we're at 5 sets of 3. Let's say it's the press. We're at 5 sets of 3 on the press. She wants to get stronger on the press. We want to add more muscle mass to her shoulders and her upper body, but she kind of hits that wall and we're dieting. And let's say she's still got 30 pounds to lose. We've lost 10 pounds now.
Well, the first thing I'd do, I'm assuming she's probably missing her last 2 sets. So I'll do 2 sets of 3 and then some back off sets with a lighter weight to keep the total volume the same.
Sure.
And I do this approach with the men too. I think in the book it's 3x3, but I'll do like 2x3 and then 3x3 with a lighter weight.
Sure, we do the same. We do 90% back off sets, 85 to 90%.
Because I don't think 1 triple is taxing enough for a novice. And when I say novice, I really mean somebody who's never lifted before, somebody who's been detrained for more than 6 months.
Right.
Not the guy who's been doing the Globo Gym bodybuilding workouts.
And now he comes into your facility.
That's not a novice.
Right, I agree.
But he should still do an LP for other reasons.
Right.
But he's not a ranked novice and he's not detrained. Right. I'm talking about the person who has not been barbell training for...
Right. They're either detrained or untrained.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the two, detrained or untrained.
Yeah, because I was the recovering bro.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was a very different experience with LP. It actually beat the heck out of me at the end, because I've been squatting for 10 years,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But anyways, back to your person. So what do I do? First thing I do is 2 heavy triples, so 2 sets of 3 repetitions, and then 3 sets with lighter weight, so I'll maybe do a 5% reduction in weight.
Sure.
And for most female clients, that tends to work well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're still getting their volume in.
Yeah.
And you still got some upper sets with intensity and some lower sets just to keep that volume up high where it's supposed to be. Now, would you change their diet at all? Or would you increase her carbohydrate intake at all to give her a little bit more energy? Or do you think that's the problem? Or
So you read my mind because now we're talking about stuff we all do. So from the diet side, the first thing I do is I'm like, you have to have intra-workout carbs, so now we have to start shifting the carb timing. So the amount of food is the same, but now because there's a good chance that they might be using some blood glucose. Now, for all you semantic PhD people, sure, we haven't really measured this, so we don't know for sure that that's what happens, but I know with running, once you deplete all your glycogen stores from running, you start tapping into blood glucose and using that for energy.
Right.
And that's why they found that, like, if you take a runner and they're you're about to hit the wall, they call it, or they're about to deplete their glycogen stores, they give them Gatorade, they can go a little bit longer than if they don't.
Yeah.
So with a lifter, we don't know that lifting's typically not glycogen depleting, and to define that, glycogen is your stored carbohydrate source. So your muscles feed themselves with carbs. They store carbs and they feed themselves with carbs. The only thing that glycogen store is used for is for the muscle to feed itself. So it can't be released into the bloodstream.
Right.
But let's say you start bonking now because, you're at the end of a diet. She still has 30 pounds to lose, so she's not at the end of a diet, but she's at a point where she needs to reduce her carbs to a point where those glycogen stores are now getting either partially depleted or fully depleted, depending on how those carb stores are going. I don't think anybody that I've coached has gotten fully depleted because I haven't done a true keto with anybody.
Yeah, sure.
But they're not fully. Their muscles aren't fully filled with carbs.
Right.
So now the carbs you eat become more important. Typically, the muscles feed themselves because they have their own reservoir.
Because she has a lower carbohydrate intake, due to the diet model we have her on, she may have a lower level of muscle-stored carbohydrates.
That's correct.
And when she gets in the middle of her workout, in the middle of her work sets, we don't want her to be limited in her strength gains by the fact that she merely doesn't have enough intramuscular glycogen on board.
So think of it like this. She's running on half a tank of gas with a hole in the gas tank. You got to constantly pour gas in there to keep it at half a tank.
Right. But it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to fill up the gas tank.
Exactly.
And she might be in the middle of the set and she's still trying to fill the gas tank up, but there's not enough carbs in it.
Yes, exactly.
So she might miss the reps when actually it's not a strength function, it's a fueling function.
Exactly.
It's a fueling problem.
Yeah.
And so we don't want her to do that. So I love the idea that you said, though, of timing. Maybe so let's say she had a total carb intake of 200 grams of carbs a day or something. I'm just going to put a number out, 175 grams of carbs a day, whatever it is, okay? Which probably, to be honest with you...
Let's call it 100.
Yeah, I was about to say, probably, to be honest with you, that's way too high. That's more of a guy level, but or a male level.
That's accurate, yeah.
Yeah, let's say she's going to have about 100 grams of carbs a day. And at some point, what you're saying is she might save 20 grams of those carbs a day or 25 grams of those carbs a day to eat with highly absorbable, readily absorbable, easy to process, simple carbs right before her workout and a little bit during the workout.
That's right.
So I tell you one thing that I love, and I eat it every single morning. I know it's a lot, but I eat about 2 cups of unsweetened applesauce every single morning. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a great source of carbohydrates.
Yep.
It's unsweetened, so it's all natural, and it gets in your bloodstream about like that. It's puree. It's baby food.
Yeah.
But so she could have like a cup of applesauce, unsweetened applesauce, right before she works out.
Yep.
And then maybe a little something while she's training, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're wanting to now time that her daily intake of carbohydrates are around the energy expenditure, higher energy expenditure activities like lifting, but the diet's the same. The beautiful thing about that is she's going to burn it, and so we're still going to see that appreciable weight loss.
Yeah, she's still at the same deficit. We're just moving the carbohydrates closer to the activity.
You know, one thing that I find that's a crazy common trend, and maybe this is just in my own head I'm seeing this, and it's not real. Maybe you could tell me it's foolishness, but I find that one reason that women and men both, but especially women, don't lose weight in the manner that they want to is they're way under proteining, like we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
They think they have enough protein, and they're way under proteining. And they actually need to eat more protein than they think they do need to eat, like we were talking about earlier.
We are all notoriously bad at self-reporting things.
Oh,
It's just a human nature. We're not very good at it. You know?
Yeah, and I find myself habitually now, if I know I'm hungry, like we all ate lunch today together before we were doing this podcast, we ate lunch. But we all ate kind of a later lunch because of flight schedules and my clinical schedule and Trent's schedule and everything. And so I was kind of hungry, but I didn't want to be too full so we could all enjoy lunch together. Yeah. So I went and I had a 30-gram protein drink.
Yep.
You know, so what I try to reach for when I reach for something, I try to make it protein dense.
Those are the habits, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, I try to make it protein dense.
And that's what I'm trying to teach them. You know?
Yeah. And that's intuitive. Yeah. You know, it's not something that I have to measure, even though I know that's a 30-gram. It's got 3 grams of carbohydrates, no grams of fat, and it's got 30 grams of protein in a whey isolate protein shake. So I just know that by reaching for that, if I'm going to reach for something, it's going to be protein-based, or it's going to be a simple carb, you know, or it's going to be, you know, a really good vegetable carb, or maybe a low-sugar fruit carb. I love to get a handful of blueberries or a handful of blackberries and eat those, versus going for the banana or going for the orange or going for the grapes, even though I love grapes too. Those are all nature's candy. They're naturally higher in sugar. They're not bad for us, but I think you start learning some of these things. And our goal, obviously, is to teach people how to eat, and that when we teach them how to eat, they naturally know what to eat.
Yes.
You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, because discipline only works in the short term. You know, you can't have willpower will not last over years, months, weeks. We've all tried it, you know. We've all done crash diets.
We all self-destruct.
right.
So it's got to be intuitive, and it's got to agree with the personality of the person, you know.
Yeah, so you rely on that a lot. Like you said earlier, you assess the person early on if they're good with measuring, if they're good with numbers, if they need more just concepts, if they need more hand-holding, if they need more accountability. You assess that early on with your clients.
It's so cool because I have a girl. She's an Indian client, so she eats a lot of Indian food. Yeah. And that stuff's notoriously high carb, high fat. I haven't had her track anything, just show me pictures. And then we got I think we got a month in, and every week was different than the last. I mean, some of the stuff was the same, but then there were these days that just swung so much from the baseline. And my first goal was just to close that gap and get the days more consistent, even if the food's changed on the weekends, right? And then we got it to where her weight flatlined and the pictures were looking more or less the same every week. Sure. And at that point, I was like, all right, those Indian flatbreads you're making at home that look so delicious and I want to eat so bad, you're going to cut those in half this week.
Yeah.
I got to get on True Coach today because I think she's going to lose. That's my prediction, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But we spent a month where no weight loss happened, and we were just trying to get her consistent. And that's that variable is the most important variable in anything we do, but in this case, diet. You know, the consistency is what you really want to hit first. That's your foundation. If you're consistent day to day, then all you got to do is add or subtract. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, and I believe with our client that she's going to lose weight, and she's going to gain strength and gain muscle mass over time. I do believe there's going to come a time where her weight loss is getting low enough, where she's closer to her ideal body weight, and she's towards the top of her LP, and it's going to get tough.
Oh yeah,
it's going to get hard. It's going to get to where weight loss can no longer be the goal. We may be recompositioning weight even more so at this point, and we're really looking at the fact that we're driving strength and we're driving muscle mass gains, but we're done with. We could be 5 pounds off. We could even be 10 pounds off. We have to be realistic with ourselves and say, what's our body composition? Measure our body fat, and we say to ourselves, wow, she's got 20% body fat, which is down there in the fitness and athletic
pretty
female.
Lean,
yeah. Or she's got 23, whatever it is. I think women have a real unrealistic picture of what that's supposed to be. Most women cannot be the 14% gymnastics body, female gymnasts, that becomes amenorrhinic,
Well, us too. You get guys that want to be 220 and, 9% body fat,
Right. And I'll tell you.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier when we were at lunch. I'm the heaviest I've ever been, and I used to keep around 8% body fat when I was around 175, 180, 185. I could keep about 6 to 8% body fat, really lean. But now at 210, it's a lot harder for me to get there.
Yeah,
a lot harder for me to get there. I probably stay around 14 to 16%.
That feels great, man. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and so I feel good there, but I could, when you get older, man, you start depositing in other areas.
Yeah.
You know, you may only be 14 to 16%, but you have it in areas where you genetically don't want it. You know?
Well, I went from wanting abs to, okay, I'm good with just not having a gut.
Yeah.
Right.
Because now I got these things called shoulders and lats.
And you're not even 40 yet, man. No. So, dude, just wait.
Yeah, I like how you've couched that you know, the key here is that this is a long-term process.
Yeah.
And you may get to the end of your LP and you're not there at that, you know, quote unquote target body weight yet. And it's going to take longer than 3 months.
Yeah.
It may take longer than 6 months even.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think a lot of people overlook that you spelled out with your example of your Indian client is that there's two components here. There's one is learning how to lose weight sustainably. The other is learning how to keep your existing weight. You know, and those people that have gone through this cycle of up and down, they have not learned how to make sustainable weight loss. And this kind of built into the method you're talking about here is that they learn how to reach a baseline and then stay at that baseline.
Mm-hmm. And I think too that through that process, with what we do with our client base, by the fact that we use strength training instead of cardiovascular training or aerobic training or Zumba. No offense to Zumba, okay, but whatever else you're doing, we're also changing their mental approach, their expectation level as to what a healthy, fit body should look like.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my wife last night. My wife is in her 50s. I won't tell you her exact age. She looks like she's in her 30s. She looks amazing.
This is true. I've seen her.
I was talking to her last night, and she had on a tank top, and then she had like some really cute little sports bra thing. And now these women are wearing these sports bra things with all these different straps.
Oh yeah, that's what my girlfriend has. Yeah,
like Christy wears
a spider web on the back.
9 different straps or whatever it is. It's like, hey, why don't you just have one strap? You know, it's stylish. You know, it's
it looks
fashion.
cool.
High-tech support.
It's like multiple outriggers.
That's Lululemon doing that. That's where she's buying them, right? Yeah.
But hey, it looks great on her, so I don't care, man. It looks good. But so I was looking at her back, and I said, this is what a 50-year-old woman's back should look like. It's muscular. I said, give us a back pose. Show us your biceps in a back pose.
Yeah.
Back double bi.
She was so self-conscious to do that. And once she did it, you were like, bam, rhomboids and traps and lower traps and upper traps and her deltoids. I was like, when you put on a like a tank top or she puts on a bathing suit, she has traps. It's not flat, and her shoulders are flat and her arms just kind of hang there.
Yep.
So what we're doing too is we're changing the expectation level as to what a fit and healthy body looks like and what it actually weighs too. I keep telling her, stop worrying about the scale. Just look at what your body composition looks like. Just look about how much muscle mass you have. And so I think that's true with males and females. By the way, guys, I don't care what you're reading in the media and everything else that women like a dad bod more than they do like a fit bod. I don't give a rip. A dad bod is for putzes. You know, get a body back. Get some muscle mass on your frame. When I see a dad bod, what I think of is undisciplined, unmotivated, unsuccessful. I'm sorry, that's just my thinking process. So, you know, I think that we should be striving to keep our bodies in shape and stay fit and healthy. I think it's more about also what it does to our minds too. So, well, man, guys, we've covered a bunch of info here on this topic. Are we pretty much done here?
Yeah. Thank you, Robert, for joining us. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys. So thanks for joining the 40 Fit Radio podcast. Robert, what's your Instagram handle again?
_Robert_Santana.
Okay. And if they want to reach out to you in any other method, what are the methods they can reach out?
They can reach out to me at my website, weightsandplates.com.
I love that name.
They could reach out to me through Barbell Logic online coaching or through Renaissance Periodization if they are interested in those their style of doing things.
Okay, cool. Well, you can also find Trent and I. You can find Trent at Marmalade Cream on Instagram, me at Dr. Deaton on Instagram, and then you can also find us at 40fit.com, and you can email us info@40fit.com. We'd love to hear your comments, your reviews. You can find the podcast on iTunes, on other podcast mediums, and you can also just download the podcast on the 40 Fit Radio tab on the website. Man, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for joining the 40 Fit Nation.